In this build along tutorial, we'll be building a bracket for the HCSR04 ultrasonic sensor. Once you've got FreeCAD open, create a new part in the part design workbench. In the tasks tab, create a new body and create a sketch. We'll do this on the XY plane. And once we're into the Sketcher workbench, we'll begin by creating a rectangle that is symmetric around the origin. We'll do this by clicking in the top left-hand corner, clicking on the vertex in the bottom right corner, and clicking on the origin, and then using the Constrain Symmetric tool. We are going to set the width of this box to 48 millimeters, and we're going to set the height of this box to 10 millimeters. Our sketch is fully constrained, so we can close out of the Sketcher workbench. We're going to pad this shape out 6 millimeters, and we're going to add a new feature to the top of this block. So left click on the top of the block, click on Create Sketch, and we're going to create this another block or another rectangle along the bottom of this block. So we're going to reference using the Create External Geometry tool the bottom of our block. Grab that Create Rectangle tool and begin by hovering over the bottom left-hand corner, left-clicking, and dragging your rectangle out. We're going to stop short of the edge of the box there, and we're going to constrain the corner of our new box to the corner of our block by left-clicking on both vertices and using the Constrain Coincident tool. And lastly, we're going to set the height of this box to 3 millimeters. So now that we've got that done, our box is fully constrained and we can close out of the Sketcher workbench. We're going to pad this new rectangle out to 24 millimeters. And this will create the basic bracket for our sensor. We need to add some features to it now so that it will connect onto the rest of the parts on our SparkBot robot. We're going to go to the bottom of this bracket and left click on the bottom face and create a new sketch. And here we're going to create a carve out in the bottom of the bracket so that this bracket can sit on top of the bracket for our 9-volt battery. So we're going to reference the top and bottom edges of our bracket here using the Create External Geometry tool. I'm going to grab that Create Rectangle tool, and I'm just going to create a box in the center here. And I'm going to left click on the top left corner, and I'm going to left click on our top edge, and I'm going to use the Constrain Coincident tool. I'm going to do something similar for the bottom edge. And now our box, our rectangle that we're creating is constrained to the edges of our box. We're going to make this box so that it is symmetric around the y-axis. And now we're going to set the length of this box to 24 millimeters. The sketch is fully constrained, so we can close it at the Sketcher workbench. We're going to pocket this shape here, and we're going to pocket it to a depth of 6 millimeters. And this creates a carve out so that the 9-volt battery box will be able to sit up nice and close to the backside of our sensor. Next, we need to increase the thickness of these bottom pads at the bottom of our bracket. The screws that we're going to be using are longer than the 6 millimeters that we've provided here. So to increase the thickness of these pads, I'm going to left click on the top face of one of these pads and create sketch. And I'm going to come up here to the View Section tool and click on that so that I'm clearing away the top part of the bracket and I can just focus on these bottom pads here. And I'm going to use the Create External Geometry tool, and I'm going to reference the right and left edges of our paths. Right click to clear my tool. And now I'm going to use the Create Rectangle tool, and I'm going to create a rectangle that is constrained to the edges of our box here. So left click on the top left corner of the rectangle, left click on the top of the line segment, and we will constrain coincident there. And we will do a similar thing to the bottom right corner of that rectangle. So we can see that this rectangle now is fully constrained to the bottom left pad. And we'll do a similar thing over here. And if you just, if you create your rectangle by left clicking on the top vertice of this referenced line, the rectangle will automatically lock to the top of that line, and we can left click on the bottom of the right hand line, and so that's the quick, easy way of constraining the new rectangle to the pad. So at this point we're done, and the sketch is fully constrained, so we can close out of the Sketcher workbench. And now we're going to pad out the rectangles that we've just created, and we're going to pad them out by 3.5 millimeters. And so now we have suitably thick pads at the bottom that we'll be able to put a screw into through the bottom of our SparkBot platform. Our next step is to rotate around to the front face of the bracket, and we're going to add some features to the front that will allow the sensor to be mounted into the bracket. So right click on the front face of the bracket and click on Create Sketch. And we're going to begin by creating two circles. So we'll grab the Create Circle tool, and we'll just draw out two fairly random circles. We're going to constrain them to the same horizontal plane. So left click in the center of both circles and click on the Constrain Horizontal tool. So now when I move one circle, the other circle moves with it. I'm going to constrain the diameters of both circles so that they're the same. So left click on both circles and then click the Constrain Equals tool. And we're going to make it so that these two circles are symmetric around the y-axis. So left click in the center of both circles, left click on the, this is the z-axis actually, so left click on the z-axis, and we'll click on Constrain Equals. And so when I move one circle in, the other one moves towards it. All right. We're going to separate these circles by 26 millimeters. So again, click in the center of both of these circles and click on the Constrain Horizontal Distance. And again, we're setting that to 26 millimeters. Next, we're going to constrain the diameter of both of our circles. So just pick a circle and choose Constrain Diameter. And we're going to set this to 16.4 millimeters. So now we have constrained the diameter there. And the last thing that we need to do is we need to constrain the position of these circles on our bracket. And I'm going to do that with reference to the top of the bracket here. So I'm going to use the Create External Geometry reference tool, bring in that top line, and I'm going to left click on the center of that left-hand circle, left click on the end of our line segment there, and I'm going to set the vertical distance to 10.5 millimeters. So now these two main circles are fully constrained. I'm going to now add a slot down below it. So we'll use the slot tool, and we'll just create this slot so that it is symmetric around the y-axis or the z-axis. And we're going to make it so that it's symmetric. So left click on both of these dots, left click on the z-axis, and click on the Constrain Equals tool. All right, so now our slot is constrained in that dimension. Let's constrain the radius of the slot. So left click on one of the arcs, left or right, doesn't matter, and choose constrain radius. And we're going to constrain the radius to 2 millimeters. Now that we've got that done, we need to constrain the width of the slot. So left click on those two dots, and we're going to constrain its horizontal distance to 6.4 millimeters. And lastly, we just need to constrain its position along the z-axis. So left click on that left circle, left click in the center of this larger circle, and we're going to constrain the vertical distance between these 2 points to 7 millimeters. So now we've got the two main features created that will allow the sensor to simply sit in a passive way in our bracket. So let's close out because we're fully constrained, and let's pocket these features. And 5 millimeters clears the pockets. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add the holes through our bottom pads that the screws will use to attach to the base plate of the SparkBot. So I'm going to rotate this bracket around so that I can see the bottoms of these pads. And I'm going to left click on one of the pads and then click on Create Sketch. And I'm just going to center a circle in the middle of both of these pads. So I'll just use the Create External Geometry Reference tool to bring in the edges of these pads. And then I will use the Create Circle tool, and I will create a circle here. And I'm going to use the constraint equals. So I'm going to get rid of this constraint around the x-axis there. I want to be able to move this circle. So now I'm going to left click on the top left corner, left click on the bottom right corner, left click the center of the circle, and choose constraints equal. We'll do the same thing on the other side, clicking in the center of the circle last, and we constrain equal. We're going to set both of these circles to have the same diameters, so we left click on both of them and constrain equal. And now we're going to set the diameter of these circles to 2.8 millimeters. We're going to be using 3 millimeter plastic screws, designed for holding on to plastic, and so 2.8 gives enough clearance for the threads on these screws. So we're fully constrained here, and we can close out of the Sketcher workbench. And now we're going to pocket this feature, and so we need to clear at least 9.5 millimeters, so we'll put in 10 millimeters, and there we are. The pocket holes have gone all the way through. The next feature that we're going to add is some space around the inside of the bracket here where the circuit board for the sensor pokes through partly. So we're going to click on that top face, and we're going to create a sketch. And we're going to reference the top edge of our bracket. And so grab a Create Square tool, and we're going to click right on the edge that we've referenced, drag it in and across. And we want to make sure that this is symmetric around the z-axis. So left click on the top left corner, left click on the top right corner, left click on the z-axis, and constrain equal. So now the rectangle is centered around the z-axis. We're going to set the length of this rectangle to 10 millimeters. And we're going to set the height to 3 millimeters. So our sketch here is fully constrained, and so we can close out of the Sketcher workbench, and we're now going to pocket this feature to a depth of 1.7 millimeters. So that creates a nice little pocket there. And the last thing that we need to do is we just need to create a small pocket around our pocket that we created earlier. So once again, left click on that front face, click on Create Sketch. I'm going to zoom into that pocket. I'm going to use the external reference tool, and I'm going to pull in the edges of our pocket. Right-click to clear my tool. And now I'm going to grab the slot, and I am going to create a new slot, being careful to click on those center points there on our referenced arcs. This slot is constrained to those points, but now I'm going to set the radius of the slot by constraining radius to 2.75 millimeters. Now, it shows here that I have 4 degrees of freedom, and so when I zoom in, I can see that the slot didn't actually get constrained to the centers of those arcs there. So to do this, I'll left-click on the center of our current slot. We'll left-click on the center of that arc there, and we will constrain coincident. And we will do the same thing on this side here. So left-click on the center of the arc, constrain coincident, and now our slot is fully constrained, and our radius is 2.75 millimeters on our current slot, so I can close out of that. And I'm going to pocket this new slot to 0.6 millimeters. So there we are. That creates a little bit of an inset around that socket. All right, so we now have a useful bracket for the HCSR04 ultrasonic sensor, and this will allow us to put the bracket around the 9-volt battery holder that we've created for SparkBot.